In 1959, more than 5,000 people were living on a single island, barely bigger than a few city blocks, packed in so tight that it holds the record, to this day, as the most densely populated place that has ever existed on planet Earth. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to live somewhere so crowded that you could walk from one end of your entire world to the other without ever stepping outside? What happens to a place like that when, one day, the reason for its existence just disappears? And what happens to the people it swallowed along the way? Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand why this tiny concrete island off the coast of Japan is one of the most extraordinary and most contested places ever built by human hands. 15 kilometers off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, in the open water of the East China Sea, there's a small gray shape that looks, from a distance, like a warship at anchor. It isn't. It's an island, or rather, what used to be one, before people got their hands on it. Its real name is Hashima, but almost everyone who's ever heard of it calls it by its nickname, Gunkanjima, Battleship Island. For 84 years, this scrap of rock and reclaimed land was home to a coal mine, a company town, and, at its peak, a city more crowded than anywhere else on the planet. Today, it's silent. The apartment blocks stand hollow, their windows broken, and, quote, all their concrete slowly giving way to salt and wind. To understand how a place like this came to exist, and why it still matters, we have to go back to the beginning, to a stretch of barren rock nobody wanted. The story starts around 1810, when coal was first discovered on this unremarkable little outcrop. For decades, it stayed a footnote, some small-scale digging. Nothing more. That changed in 1890, when the Mitsubishi Corporation bought the island outright for 100,000 yen, a genuine fortune at the time. Mitsubishi didn't just want the coal underneath the seabed. They wanted to build a mine that could run around the clock, which meant they needed somewhere for their workers to actually live. They built up. In 1916, they completed something Japan had never seen before. A 9-story, reinforced concrete apartment building, constructed specifically to survive the typhoons that battered the island every year. It's considered the first large concrete apartment block in the country. Over the following decades, more towers went up, packed in tighter and tighter, connected by a maze of covered corridors and staircases, built so tightly together that residents could cross the entire island without ever stepping into the rain. By 1959, this city on a rock had a population of 5,259 people, crammed into a space smaller than many stadium footprints. Every inch mattered. Families slept in tiny apartments. Some residents, working around the shortage of soil, even built rooftop gardens, Japan's first, just to see something green. But honestly, the most crowded chapter of Hashima's story isn't even the most remarkable part. Because underneath all that ambition, something much darker was happening. During World War II, as Japan pushed to keep its industrial war machine running, thousands of Korean laborers, and later Chinese prisoners of war, were brought to Hashima to work the mine. According to survivor testimony and historical accounts, conditions were brutal. Workers were sent deep into shafts that plunged nearly a kilometer beneath the sea, in heat and humidity that made every shift exhausting, with little food and constant danger. The Japanese government has acknowledged that Korean workers were brought to sites like Hashima under wartime labor mobilization, though it has resisted the term forced labor that South Korea and China used to describe what happened. What isn't in dispute is that people died there. Accounts differ sharply on exactly how many, with estimates ranging from around 140 to well over 1,000, depending on the source and what's being counted. For the Japanese miners living just floors above, life went on: school, work, community. But for the laborers brought there against their will, the island wasn't Battleship Island. Survivors who lived through it remembered it as something closer to a prison. Now here's where things take a turn that nobody, not even the people living there, could have predicted. After the war, Hashima somehow entered a strange golden age. The Korean War drove coal demand back up, wages climbed, and by the 1960s, nearly every apartment on the island had a television, a washing machine, and a refrigerator. Luxuries most of mainland Japan couldn't yet afford. Japan was shifting from coal to oil, and by the early 1970s, the mines simply wasn't profitable anymore. In January 1974, Mitsubishi gathered the remaining workers and announced the mine was closing for good. Within about 3 months, it was over. By April, the last residents boarded a boat for the mainland, leaving behind furniture, school books, and belongings too bulky to carry, turning the most densely populated place on Earth into a ghost town almost overnight. For the next 35 years, nobody was allowed back. Landing without permission was illegal. Typhoons tore through empty apartments. Salt water crept into the concrete, rusting the steel bones inside the walls, until they cracked from within. The island that once held thousands sat completely, silently, empty. And if you think that's the end of the story, just wait. Because Hashima wasn't done making headlines. In 2009, 35 years after the last boat left, Hashima reopened. But only barely. Guided tours were permitted to a small, reinforced section on the island's southern edge. The rest, roughly 90% of it, remained too dangerous to enter, and still is today. Then, in 2015, Hashima was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for its role in Japan's rapid industrial rise. But the listing came with strings attached. Japan pledged to fully acknowledge the island's wartime forced labor history as part of the designation. That promise has been the source of an ongoing dispute ever since. South Korea and international heritage bodies say Japan hasn't followed through, that museum exhibits and tour guides have downplayed or omitted the wartime history entirely. Japan maintains it has met its obligations. UNESCO's own committee has repeatedly expressed concern that more needs to be done. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos.